Everyone, my name is Darren Lawford. I am Creative Director at Woodcut Media, and I am Chair for today's RTS Southern webinar, which is called Cracking the Format, Alchemy or Science. And so joining me today, I have a stellar panel from three amazing regional indies, and together we'll be exploring what makes a successful format and what the appetite for formats looks like in a world where COVID's disruptive impact is keenly felt in the TV industry. Now, feel free to send in any questions and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. And I will stop talking now and I'll hand over to our panel and we'll get to know who they are a little bit more. So Chris and Claire, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and Topical Television?
Hello, everyone. Hi. Topical TV, based in Southampton, and we've been going over 20 years. And in fact, we've been described memorably by somebody as a large company masquerading as a small one. In a sense, we've made over 1,000 programs and 1,000 hours of network television. But we keep a fairly low profile in the sense that from the start, we decided that we were in it for the long game, especially being a regional company, and that we are interested in long-running series, and we've tended to opt for long-running series in favour of higher-profile short bursts over the years. But and then we have made a lot of long-running series, and we are currently making Caught Red-Handed and Close Calls on camera, which are both into their 180th programmes for the BBC. But occasionally we don't just like to be left profile, so we flex our muscles and do some things with a higher profile. And Claire, we've recently had success with one of the Channel 4 evening documentary series. Claire.
Hello, hi everyone. My name's Claire Masters. I'm the creative director for Topical Television. I mean, as Chris says, we make lots of long-running daytime programs in an area in which we've been very successful. But we're also one of the main suppliers and have been for 10 years for the One Show. I think we've made about 500 films for them now. So that's really good for us, for our profile. And we've recently just made the second series of £1 House, which did extremely well for Channel 4. Was goodness, three and a half years in the making. So I was up in Manchester and Liverpool for a lot of that time, but back down south now, and keen to kind of continue looking into shows like that, but also the sort of long-running access-based factual stuff that Topical is known for.
Thank you. Now Rob and Hannah, tell us about yourselves and Ricochet.
Hi there, so I'm Rob Butterfield, I'm Director of Programmes at Ricochet. Ricochet is also a regional company. We're based in Brighton, and Brighton is very much part of our heart and soul. I've been there for a very long time. I've been there for 16 years. I arrived as an AP, and back then it was a really little company with a tiny little office, an old scene full of excitable 20-somethings, a lot of whom are still there. And but since then we've sort of really kind of blossomed and have made some truly international hit formats like Super Nanny, Cowboy Builders, It's Me or the Dog, and more recently the Repair Shop's been a wonderful success for us, which Hannah looks after.
Yes, hi, I'm Hannah Lamb. I'm the executive producer of Repair Shop. I have been at Ricochet I was one of the excitable 20-somethings as well at the early stages of Ricochet. So have watched the company grow, and now very excited to be working on the Repair Shop currently.
Thank you. And Sarah from Woodcut. I'm
Sarah Freethy. I'm executive producer at Woodcut, and I feel a bit of an imposter because Darren is my boss. I've only been at the company for 2.5 years, but Woodcut's best known for crime, including international crime franchise like World's Most Evil Killer. We've also got a good specialist factual and premium talent slate with programs like Fines, Return to the Law with Sir Ranulph Fiennes. And we do formats like Tony Robinson's VE Day, Minute by Minute, and Around the World in 80 Tricks. And in my previous existence before joining Woodcut, I was part of teams that developed shows like The Hotel Inspector, Country House Rescue, and Food Hospital, which have all been returning formats.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's get started. So, first question is, what is a format? Claire, what's your definition of what constitutes a format?
Goodness, goodness. It's very hard to sort of say in shortened form, but I'll give it a go. A format is essentially a concept or a formula which includes particular characteristic devices or features, I guess, that all come together to produce, hopefully, memorable moments. So that formula is then repeated in each program of the series. So I guess, you know, it's the way that the content within a genre is structured or, you know, arranged. And I think people often get genre and format sort of mixed up. You know, they say, oh, you know, makeover we're doing a makeover format. Well, no, makeover is, you know, is a genre of television, and it's what you do to that makeover subject that is the actual format. So perhaps best to explain with some examples. You know, you have the Biggest Loser and you have You Are What You Eat. You know, both were successful weight loss shows under, I guess, a subgenre of diet makeover. Both had the same result, that people lost weight, but the way that both those series applied a format was very, very different. I mean, The Biggest Loser obviously was a competitive format where people competed for a cash prize. Whoever lost the most weight won a cash prize. You Are What You Eat was one contributor per episode. And this contributor over a number of weeks was put through a series of experiences, which again, you know, in both series you learned about good food and bad food. You saw people lose weight, but the formats that were very different. You know, so the format is like the shape of the show, and how you execute that format, whether you be making a show about singing or dancing or travel or food or whatever. It's really crucial to make sure that your format is very, you know, very, very clear. And, you know, I'm resisting the urge to go into what makes a good format, because I know obviously we're going to go on to speak about that. But I think Hannah, now from Ricochet, is going to go on to talk a little bit more about, you know, essentially what format is.
Yeah, no, I mean, as Claire said, it's really a recipe, I guess, for making a program and making that program repeatable. I guess format points appear on each show. Some have more format points than others, probably a bit like you just described, Claire. But it's these repeatable moments that are key to a format and work, I guess, two ways really. In business sense, in terms of how to budget and schedule a program, being able to kind of create that high quality, which you can then repeat, and then of course being able to sell that, whether that be to be made in other territories, or kind of repeat those programs in other places. And then secondly, I guess it's recognizable for a viewer, in the sense that you've got a unique style and something that's reliable to return to as a viewer. So you know what you're going to get, you know you're going to enjoy it. You can guarantee that hour or half hour, whatever that period of telly is, that you're going to, you know what you're going to get, and hopefully you're going to enjoy that. I guess that's why you tune in. So
great, thank you, Beth. Okay, so can you format any genre? And I'll come to Sarah first on this.
Yes, absolutely. I think as Hannah was saying, it's the 4 R's. It's regular, recognizable, repeatable and reliable beats, and those can happen in any kind of genre that you mentioned. So you might think that drama couldn't be formatted, but I would argue somebody like Armando Iannucci or Aaron Sorkin have a sort of a directorial and writing style that is a format that means that you know what you're getting, and they have beats that are always there, and that's sort of why they're so enjoyable to watch. I think there's a comfort in a format that means you know where you are in the program, and you know where you are, but the thing that I think makes it exciting is and the reason why you can fit it into any genre is making sure that format is distinct, and it's very much something that stands out from other things and makes that program have its own unique character. So something that we've done at Woodcut is Paranormal Captured, which is something which is a paranormal found footage program, but the format that's been applied to it is this sort of lovely skeleton, and the program just has its strength from a recognizable format that you can come back to time and time again, and it builds up around something that's quite amorphous in the terms of what might be like paranormal activity caught on camera. A format just bulks it up and gives it its place.
Thank you. And Rob, what's your take on that?
Well, I would say it's actually impossible to make a television program that doesn't have some form of format. Format it's what makes something intelligible. So even a really unformatted observational documentary has a format. You set up your stall at the beginning. What's it going to be about? If you're on a commercial channel, you make sure there's something that is going to keep you watching past the break and keep you watching to the end. And if you think about all genres of TV, there is a format. The news has a format. EastEnders has a format. That's the format beat. And as Hannah was saying earlier, this is how we all decide what's going to make a program work, by deciding its format, and it's what makes it sell. And you can think about, as you were saying, Sarah, dramas can have a format. You think about something like Broadchurch. That's a drama with a format that was sold to America. The Office is a comedy that had a format that was sold to America. So it makes great business sense to have a clear format.
If you can hear anything in the background, that's my dog. Do apologise. So, what are the best formats on TV today, and you're not allowed to pick your own? And I'll start with you, Rob.
Okay, so I think if you're thinking about the best formats on TV, you really have to think about the ones that have been around forever and work, because that's really the format doing its job, because it's got longevity and it's built a really loyal audience. So, Antiques Roadshow, that's an amazing format because it's still on TV and still gets some of the biggest viewerships on TV. Come Dine With Me, those real stalwarts, those are kind of I think they're the best formats on TV. I was trying to think of a new format that I think is a good format, and I think that Snackmasters on Channel 4 is a really good example of that. Partially because slightly annoyingly, it took something that we do on one of our programs, Food Unwrapped, took a small element of that and blew it up into this big fun format where you have top chefs competing to try and make the most realistic version of a Kit Kat. And it's really fun and funny, but delivers content, but also keeps you watching to the end, because you want to see who did best, because it's a competition. Those are what I think are the best.
Great. And Claire, what's the best format or the best formats on TV today for you?
Oh, goodness. Well, as Rob said, I think when you're thinking about the best formats, you have to think about ones that have, as Rob said, have had the longevity and the most successful, clearly, very popular with the audiences and engaging. I think the best formats are the ones that create the best moments, and moments don't have to be dramatic, they can be emotional. For me, it falls into three categories. It's formats I watch with my kids, family viewing, so very obvious, but Strictly Come Dancing. It's kind of TV gold for us. We all love it. It brings the family together, great characters, competition, brilliant will they, won't they moments. In terms of formats I admire, Back in Time for Tea, brilliant title, fantastic way to do history. Loads of historical information wrapped up in sort of entertaining sequences. I think, what makes a good format, there's several boxes you have to tick, and you can never tick them all, but I think both those formats, tick a lot of them and make them really, really sort of engaging, must watch. I think, in terms of other formats I admire, because they're brilliantly returnable, fantastic story churn, ever renewable content, with opportunities for spin-offs, and as Rob said, Come Dine With Me, Escape to the Country, Homes Under the Hammer. Whether you like them, whether you could leave them, if you're trying to come up with a successful format, you really would do well to sit down and watch a few of these episodes, and just see how they do it, because they've clearly cracked it in terms of success. I mean, the shows are on TV and they run. So, and of course, while Rob's not allowed to mention it, I can, and that is a repair shop. Brilliant. It's the holy grail for all of us. It's started in daytime, it's gone to peak. Fantastic storytelling. Great moments. I mean, you just can't turn it off once you start watching. So, yeah, I know we're going to go on to talk about that, but yeah, another brilliant format.
But I think you're right. If you want to really work out what makes a good format, take something like Bargain Hunt and dissect it. Because actually, it's kind of laser like sort of cut to really make you want to keep watching.
Absolutely. I mean, I think things like Strictly Come, yeah, brilliant. But topical television down here on the South Coast are never going to make Strictly Come Dancing. It's thinking about what your situation is, what your budgets are, and coming up with a simple format like those shows we've mentioned, Bargain Hunt, Come Dine, and thinking what other subjects out there you could apply that to.
And Sarah, any other big formats we should be admiring out there?
I think I just got to give a shout out to Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, because it's a format that was completely reinvented. It's just so standout. I can watch every single episode and I will weep. And even though watching formatted programs, we might all feel like it's a bit of a busman's holiday sometimes, that is one that I would never miss, because it's got heart. And I think the great formats are ones that reveal the heart in their contributors. So that's the one for me. Repair Shop has absolutely got that too.
And so, I mean, Rob, you mentioned just now that if you broke down Bargain Hunt and dissected it, that's a really good learning. I guess what we want to talk about now, what are the little ingredients that make a hit format? So, if I could come to Hannah first, actually, on this one.
I guess it's a subject or a story that piques your interest, or a way of adding that layer to something. So I always quite love it if you've got a subject that you didn't really know that you were interested in, but yet within that subject you learn so much more. So it is the sort of the stories that come from that. So it's not actually about the subject genre that you might think about, but it's the stories within. I guess it's about piquing interest and keeping it. So it's something that's going to keep hold of you, keep you watching till the end. So it hooks you at the top. It promises to deliver, and then it does deliver that reveal, or that whatever that moment is for the individual formats.
Excellent. And Sarah? I
think it's something. These are all quite amorphous ideas, but I think it's something that's really reflective of its time. So the great formats are things that you feel like they tap into a moment, but that they continue to have relevance. So something like Grand Designs was very much a sort of it captured a moment where people were starting to explore design and architecture a bit more themselves, and it's just gone on, and it's finding a topic that has a broad enough church that you can sort of constantly reinvent yourself and bring in lots and lots of different things. It's about having a sort of a very distinct idea, but that is a big enough tent that you can sort of put in all sorts of different contributors or ideas over time, and so that will just return and repeat, and it doesn't feel old because it's always the same skeleton, but the sort of the fabric is always changing.
And that is a beautiful segue into my next question, because undoubtedly the breakout format of these times during lockdown has been Repair Shop, and it was obviously successful before then, but what do you think has made it resonate even more so during these times? And this one's for Rob.
Yes, I mean, it's obviously been really lovely for us seeing Journey of the Repair Shop, which was commissioned by BBC Daytime, and very much initially, and is still, to a great extent made on based on a kind of daytime type budget, and we making it high volume. But it was, it was this little show, but we knew we'd made something really great, and it's grown and grown. And we knew last year that the BBC had made this decision to take it to peak, which we were delighted about, because it really felt like taking the stabilizers off and and letting it go. But as you say, Darren, you know, no one expected what would happen this year, but it does feel like the values of the show really, you know, and this is sort of serendipity, I guess, but really are exactly what people are looking for at the moment. And I think it's because of the themes of the program. You know, there's a very strong theme about family in the repair shop, both in terms of, you know, the items that we fix in the show often are, you know, an item that belonged to one generation of a family being passed to a next, or something that reminds you of a member of your family. We were very conscious when designing the show that we wanted that team of experts to feel like an extended family, and they're a family that you can join and be part of. And I think, you know, more than ever, all being locked down in our homes, not being able to see our loved ones, just sort of talking about that importance of family and importance of those bonds with the people we really care about really resonates. I think also there's very much a theme in the show about reassessing what's really important in life. You know, you know, these objects, these really mean something to us, not the kind of throwaway stuff, not the you know, all that ridiculous going shopping at the weekend and buying stuff that we were going to throw away. We've not been able to do that, and we've had to think about what really matters to us, and that's right there in the heart of the repair shop. I think also the joy of watching the experts in the show, people who are just really good at something that matters. You know, that I think has resonated, and more than anything else, I think it is what you mentioned, Sarah, that it's, you know, it's a show, or Claire, I can't, it's a show with real heart. And I think, you know, because there are these, you know, lovely moments that are absolutely part of the format of emotion, where we're allowing ourselves to cry. That's been quite cathartic for people. So we've got a clip, which is a really good example of that. So this was from one of the early episodes of us going to peak. And this was broadcast right in the deepest, darkest moments of first going into lockdown. And it's the story about a chap called Jeff, who he was married to his wife, a woman called Marie. When they got married, they had a jukebox in their home. So their wedding reception was just in their house, and their first dance was to a piece of music on this jukebox. Marie had died since, and the jukebox was broken, so we fixed it, you know, and this is the moment when we give it back to Jeff, and this really was, you know, so this, I mean, this show I think was the one that reached 7 million viewers. So it truly was a bit of a moment of national catharsis. So Vita, do you want to have a go at the clip?
Owner Jeff brought the jukebox to the repair shop, desperate to hear the song he and his late wife danced to on their wedding day 41 years ago. A team effort has brought it back to life. Now he's returned, keen to hear his and his late wife Marie's song once again.
Today I'm hoping to see the jukebox repaired and working. It is a memory of Marie and that magical time on our wedding day. Chair.
Okay.
Lovely to see you again.
Likewise, sir. You all right?
Yeah, great.
Good on you.
Mark.
Hello, Jeff. Nice to see you.
We're really excited to see what you think about this. You ready to sit?
Yes, please. Wow. It's alive.
Yeah.
And very beautiful it is. Mark, you've done a lovely job.
Thank you.
Does it play?
Well, should we find out?
Yeah.
is a lovely tune. Sorry.
No, don't apologise.
Don't be sorry.
I'm just glad that we could bring those memories back for you.
It's an amazing thing about music. It can instantly take you back to a special moment in time.
Exactly.
Now, I mean, I could keep watching that clip. I just love how much he clearly loved Marie. It's just a, real pleasure to have been involved in that. And I think, you know, this shows, I think Hannah's going to say a bit about it in a sec, but you know, that key part of the format, you know, how Hannah and her team, in a formatted way, delivering an emotional moment like that, that's sort of key to the show.
So Hannah, can you just tell us a little bit more about the show itself? Partly because obviously you developed it and it was made in daytime, but it's also gone out in peak. So were there slightly different considerations for both time slots? But also talk about the appeal of the show beyond the UK as well, because obviously this is a show that's also sold around the world, and that's one of the obviously key motivations of being able to develop a format from a business point of view, is that you could actually make money elsewhere as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, I guess so. It's a heavily formatted show, really. So we have sort of 3 stories for our daytime episodes. We have 4 stories for our peak time episodes. And I think that it's the fact that it's essentially the same show. You know, we haven't changed the show. We haven't. What I guess we've done is we have refined it and we fine-tuned it, and that really all comes down to the casting process, I'd say. We could have fallen into a bit of a trap, I think, with the Repair Shop, is that it could have become quite a middle-class show with middle-class contributors, as that's the sort of the arena where people tend to have nice antiques. And I guess our aim has been to try and give it a broader appeal and try and really mix up that casting, you know, with younger contributors, with different backgrounds, with more unique items, a different range of periods, you know. So huge thought goes into the casting process, and we're very careful how we combine stories and try and keep it fresh. And I guess that's really what the appeal is, probably for all territories, because I think it's we really tap into the emotion, and I think you know, that's the critical focus really for us, the emotion and how we unpack that emotion, whether that be in the arrival with the story, during the process by pulling out the stories of the item, unpacking the restoration process, or unpacking how that how the expert relates to the item or the story of the contributor, and also thinking about that reveal moment and how we return their beloved item back to them. So, you know, we really obviously interrogate how each stage of the process unfolds with the stories. And of course, I think that's just such a beautiful way of telling a story, that I think that's probably something that's incredibly attractive for all people in all areas. So I think that's why it's such a universal story, really. It's such a universal joy that it appeals everywhere.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so how do we develop a format from scratch? Is there like a secret checklist that you have that you're going to share your screens and show everyone, or how do we do that? So I'll go to Sarah on that one to kick us off.
I don't have a secret checklist, I'm afraid. If I had, I'd probably be trying to market it in some fashion. I think the short answer is you don't actually ever come up with a format from scratch, because it's always nothing that we're working on is ever in isolation. It's always a response to the other programs in that sphere. So, for instance, when when I was working on the first format of The Hotel Inspector, it had started out as a sort of a three-parter. It didn't have a very clear format, but it had been quite successful, and Channel 5 really liked the way that it had rated, that it was sort of unexpectedly gathering people in. And we were brought in, myself and Chris Williams, who was the series director, were brought in to try and impose a format on it, because when it had been filmed originally, it was very organic, and each episode had a different feel. And I think what we did at that point in time was to look around and see the other programs that we wanted to be distinct from, and make sure that we were hitting different beats and different points, and just creating a different character and personality for the show, that it could be in the same precinct but feel completely distinct. So Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares was the obvious one at the time, and it was definitely done in response to the ways that they might have approached it. So Ramsay would go into a restaurant for 4 or 5 days and do a short, sharp hit. And so we made our format be an extended one, where we would go for a couple of visits across a sort of a 6 or 7 month period, and you could have this completely different reaction and response from people when you keep coming back. So I think automatically it's a question of looking around at what else is out there, and trying to find out what makes your particular approach to that subject very different. Similarly, we did a program very recently, during lockdown, called Tony Robinson's VE Day Minute by Minute, and that was an archive program looking at the archive of VE Day, of which there were several that were going out at that point in time. And so what we wanted to do in the development process was to make sure that what we were doing was finding a really new way of looking at the same footage. And so our format was to break it down minute by minute and to go through the day. I would say the biggest thing for me in terms of how you do it from scratch is to look at your budget, because budget dictates your form. So if you've got a daytime budget, you'll be much more likely to need to do something in a couple of days. And so for me, that's a benefit. I hate having too much of a blank page when it comes to developing a new format. I like those restrictions, the kind of the guardrails that mean you know what you're trying to keep to, you know what your sort of parameters are, and then you can be as inventive as possible within those. But I think that's got to be your first thought, because it wouldn't help you to develop a great format that was completely unrealistic the way you're trying to pitch it. And then the last thing I'd say about it is something that Hannah mentioned earlier. It is the notion of finding a precinct, a subject with lots of fantastic characters in it, but where a journey is possible. And in some sort of way, I think the best formats have always got a reveal somewhere in there. They're a journey that takes you to a destination. It's a closed kind of world, and you want some satisfaction at the end of it. So something with a haircut, I would always say, if you can get a haircut in there, it's brilliant.
Great. I'll go to Chris and Claire on this one as well, because at the start, Chris, you mentioned that when you launching Topical, you were very much thinking about having long-running formats as part of the business strategy. So clearly, then, do you now, having amassed so many formats and so many long-running series, have a secret checklist yourself that you know this is the kind of thing that's going to work for daytime?
Well, like everyone else, I wish I totally had the magic touch, but begin to learn what not to do, and very often there's a clash between the way that you design a format for a short run, 3 or 6 programs, and the way you design a format for run. And you have to decide which way you're going from the start in many ways. Because thinking of all the successful formats you mentioned, few things that characterize them. One is they've all got it right from show one, more or less. You think of a successful format from Bake Off to This Morning to QI to whatever, they were right in show one. And that's really because they were designed for the right sort of purpose. And I certainly would look for a different design for a show for 3 to 6 or one-offs. People keep bringing us one-offs, and we need to make series. And then sometimes they bring things which will make 3. Well, we do make series of 3 and 6, but we really want to make series of 20, 50, 100. And interestingly, the world of TV is coming round that way again. I've been to some BBC briefings recently where they are, even for peak time, beginning to look for shows that will repeat and return on comparatively low budgets. It might be a temporary thing coming out of lockdown, but certainly people want it. But yes, there's all sorts of factors, because you've not got to just think of show 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. You've got to think of show 30, show 40. And so, you need to have a format which will return all the things which people are saying, like moments of it. But you have to have an element of real life. You have to have warmth. That was the other thing that struck me. With all the formats which we say we like and which work, one factor binds them all. They all have warmth, which is the most indefinable and difficult thing to achieve in television. It's very easy to achieve lights and music and dancing, and even Strictly to an extent get professional dancers. But what makes Strictly work isn't just dancing. After all, Come Dancing was on for many years. It's the warmth that's in that format, and that's the factor. So how do you bottle warmth over a long period? Well, we'll perhaps talk a bit later about it. One of the things is structural. You've got to think of the infrastructure. You've got to have an idea that can be delivered by your team and various teams, because teams will change over a long run. Your first team won't be the same as your third team. Your series producer won't be the same. And so you need a structure that's going to deliver. And I always reckon that there's 3 things for every story, for everything. You know, there's 3 registers. You need character, you need story, and you need, in the case of factual TV, which you make, some sort of information somewhere. You know, there's some sort of information in Bake Off, there's some sort of information in the repair shop. And it's not necessarily, you're not saying teaching people, but they need to have a slight takeaway factor. So those 3 things, and I think you need to be above 50% in 2 of the 3 all the time. So you need any moment of your series to have strong character, perhaps a strong presenter or strong contributors. You need to have, or the story's strong at this point. It was the first time in 4 years that this person had done this, that, and the other. And so you need to have a structure that will develop those things. And then the key point, I think, you also need the right people to make that series, because increasingly, I'm sure we're all finding the words authentic and real are creeping into the TV lexicon. Whereas it used to be, way back when I started, it was all about shiny floors and professional expertise and everything from comics to conjurers to, we did it to them. We did it to an audience. We put on a show. TV's learned the show now comes from it. They do it to us. And so you have to have a team that is able personally to cope with real people and real lives, that doesn't tread on them. When we started a hospital program years ago, we did a live program straight from hospital wards. We ran for 9 years. But in the first show, the floor manager wandered in and said to this ward of sick children and their parents, quiet everybody, coming to you in 5. And we realized how wrong it was, that the headphone heroes of television can actually destroy real life. So you have to have teams that will be sympathetic, and presenters. And increasingly, the TV companies want programming that has real investment from the presenter. They really are concerned with history. They really have a passion, or they are real people. And we need to just let real people into our formats, just like that wonderful clip from the repair shop. You know, real life.
Thank you. If I can go back to Rob and Hannah on this one as well. I mean, obviously we've been talking about the repair shop, but you've had many successful formats as well, and you've got Super Nanny, which ran for years and years and years and has come back again. So, you know, do you guys have, you know, you've been doing these types of shows for a long time. Do you have certain things that you know that you need to tick off in order to get it over the line?
Well, it's interesting because I don't. When you're developing a show, you don't start off with the format. You start off with the idea, and then you figure out how to make it work. And then you'll definitely do a running order and stuff like that to kind of, you know, figure out how is this going to fit into a TV show. But it's generally not until probably after series 1 done well, and there's going to be a recommission. So we're owned by Warner Brothers these days, so that so there's a big machine that kind of is there waiting to pounce and sell our programs. And you'll get an email saying, can we have a format Bible for this new show? And you're like, oh God, yeah, I'll take it. And you write it up, and that's when you realise how clever you've been. Not in the sort of genesis of it, but I think something I would sort of add to it. Obviously, getting those format beats right is important in terms of the actual making a program really watchable and something that you want to keep watching to the end. But I think there are other elements to a format. There's the the shooting style. There's the way that it's cast. Even the way that your show has been scheduled and budgeted. That's all part of the format, and that's all part of the sort of package that we might be selling if we're selling a show onto, say, for example, in France and in Denmark, where they're now making the Repair Shop, and it works the other way. So we recently just finished airing series 1 of a show on BBC One called The Bidding Room, which worked the other way, which was a German format where it had been a huge success. It's like one of the biggest shows in Germany, which always had slightly made me scratch my head because it's a relatively traditional antiques buying and selling format. But there was something really addictive about it. But we had this sort of taster tape that they sent us of this show that just looked awful. I mean, like just the production values were not the way a British program would be made. So maybe it didn't look awful, but it looked like a sort of very strange overlit studio. But we took all the format beats we wanted and applied our sort of look and our tone to it, and that show's been done really, really well. So you can see the sort of format working in 2 ways for us. That probably wasn't an answer to your question, but
an interesting answer nevertheless, though. Thank you. So obviously this is an RTS Southern seminar, and we're all at regional indies. Is there something about being in the regions that helps or hinders the development of formats? And I'll come to Chris and Claire first on that one.
Well, one key factor is staffing, and I don't think even now the broadcasters, well, that's not fair, some do, some don't, really appreciate the difference in staffing programs in the region. They all think, well, you can hire people, you just hire and fire if necessary. If someone's not working, you just get a new director, you do. But in point of fact, you are in the end very dependent on the work group of people who are within 25 miles of you, 25, 50. And having said that, you cannot be limited by that, or else you're producing substandard television for the networks who want, of course, network level programming. So you somehow have to get a lean and hungry and talented company that survives with people who you are inevitably looking ideally in a more limited field. Yes, people can come down on the train from London to Southampton and Leeds, Brighton, and it's fine, but they probably won't stay for more than 1 or 2 series. So if you are looking to do long-running series, you really need to help grow the talent. And growing talent does grow. I mean, I know many people, myself included, who, at one point in my career, people said, "Oh, don't bother with him, he's nowhere." And then a few years later, we're saying, "Oh, can we have him?" And I've just developed in that time, and I've seen that happen with lots of people here. So, you need to have an infrastructure which will build with bringing people on. And it's interesting to hear Hannah, well, indeed, and Rob both started years ago and grown with it. And that's very important. And it does mean that we need to look for, certainly for we decided for long-running series. You can only survive so long on hit-and-run productions of doing a doco where, yes, you get the director who's made 15 docos, and it's one program. It will pay your overheads for about a month or 2 months. And to grow these long-running series, which now the broadcasters want. I mean, thank you to the repair shop. It's done a marvellous thing, apart from being a marvellous programme. It's actually shown a lot of people that the sort of warmth and human stories, which aren't constructs and aren't, you know, created by television, but they are managed by television, are capable of filling peak time slots. And so they're actually beginning to say, that's what we want. In peak time, 8 o'clock, what we want is the repair shop. That means that they want long-running series. I won't say who, but we probably all heard a briefing recently from a major broadcaster who said 8 o'clock slot. They are looking for long-running, warm, authentic, real programming, which is not very expensive. And in fact, the word, you know, you could say those words another way, cheap and cheerful. But they're looking for what daytime. In fact, they said at this same briefing, they're looking at what daytime's been doing for peak. And so we all need to think in the regions of us being able to supply that with team 1, team 2, team 3, because if something goes on 4 or 5 years or more, you will have very different people doing it. You know, quite possibly have very different people doing it by the end of the 5 years, particularly if you're relying on dragging people in from all ends of the country to come and stay down in Airbnbs to do your series. They probably won't last more than one series. So that's one factor. But it's very important for regions, therefore, to have those long-running series, because it's no good having these people who grow, and if they've got no work from December, and you've got no work, you know, and they work for 2 months, and then because they're going to have to again go to London or Manchester or they're going to go away. So you've got it's a mixture. You need long-running series, and you need the right people to make them, and you need to grow that way. So yes, it is very different.
And Rob and Hannah, is that part of the reason that you have stayed at Ricochet for so long? Is that there was an opportunity to be working on long-running series and develop your careers in that way?
I mean, yes, I'm sure it's absolutely part of the reason, because the work was there for us to both be staff back then, and we've continued. But I would echo what Chris says. It's really vital for any indie to have, you know, solid returning business. That means they can have really strong roots in that area that they're in, and support local workforce and build that local work.
I think, can I just, sorry, I just wanted to quickly add that, you know, I think being down in Southampton, you know, being regional, it's just as important for the people around us to stay regional. They don't want to get on trains and go to London, and it's important for, you know, for us to have those people. Our team, you know, Caught Red-Handed has been, you know, wonderfully successful for us, and a lot of the team that are on it now in series 10 or whatever we're on it on series 1. And I think that has been, you know, massively useful for us, because they know the format inside out. They understand it needs to keep developing and changing. They know forensically the sort of the relationships we have with the councils and the police, and they're as keen to make it work here at Topical as we are to sort of have them and nurture them. So it's you know, it goes both ways, I guess.
I also think it's actually the balance, because to keep people, especially if there's ambition and there's, you know, engaged, is actually having that variety of shows, so you feel like you're progressing and learning different things, whether that's different, you know, a format to a documentary to a, you know, different genres, so you feel that you get from my point of view anyway, I think for me, I felt very lucky to be able to jump around in quite a lot of different, you know, from the blood sweat documentary series, from the travel to the more formatted formats, and actually get a real range of experience, because and that was one of the things that drove me to stay where I was, actually, I think.
Okay, and Sarah?
Just very quickly, talking of Caught Red-Handed, did anyone see Dom Littlewood on Celebrity MasterChef last night?
No.
Oh, I missed it. No.
He cooked the plastic timer Biggest disaster they've ever had on MasterChef. You built it up. It's brilliant.
Brilliant. We'll try and get that into the show somehow.
He's a real person. Dom's a real person, makes real mistakes.
Absolutely. And Sarah, do you want to add anything to this part of the debate?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think for a regional indie, it can be absolutely company defining. If you can come up with a popular returning format, that's something that's probably the thing that people will come to know you by. It will define your company, because it's quite hard, as we know, to break in. But if you've got the ingredients yourself, if you've been able to develop that format yourself, then it's a way of kind of breaking down and getting to play with the big boys, because they will take you seriously at that point. So it's an incredibly valuable thing to have in your asset.
So I know this is not an easy question to answer, but how do we do that? You know, we've all spent long moments trying to develop formats that never came to fruition. We've all probably developed formats that maybe had one run or two runs but weren't long running. So how do you go about developing something that goes from not just one series but gets recommissioned again and again and again? And I'll come to Chris and Claire to kick off this one.
Well, yes. I mean, one thing, I mean, our own experience is that, and indeed looking around, a lot of the really successful formats, particularly long-running ones, which we've been tending to talk about, and the broadcasters are beginning to talk about, literally are rooted in real life. And the stories and the moments that come into television are not created by lights and cameras. They're helped by our organisation and our formatting. But you need to have that foot into real life. And I just, another thing that typifies a lot of the successful formats that I've been over the years is that they actually stem from some moment or experience in the life of one of the producers, someone, the team, someone. And I would say almost definitely look at your own life, look at your own family, look at the people you notice, and okay, the things that you read personally, because somewhere in there will lie the spark probably of something which has the zeitgeist, which is now, which has emotion, which is an area which is of human endeavor, which can lead to a TV series. It's probably better than that than staring at a blank screen trying to think of something trendy, is to actually look inside yourself and your own contacts. But yes, there's something there. And I think I was talking about this with Rob another time, in part that's where the repair shop came from somebody. Certainly, I mean, I came up with a hospital program which lasted 9 years, which is a direct line from a road accident I came across. And I realized that I and everybody, the first people on the scenes of road accidents, do not know what to do. And so that led to emergency 999, led to real rescues in City Hospital. And actually about 10 years of television work for Topical started with that road accident that I came across in Leicestershire. And wherever you look for these successful, particularly factual series, particularly long-running factual series, there's a similar story, that it's actually grown not from, sort of pondering brilliant thoughts one afternoon. It's come from growing it out the other way organically. So that's one advice I'd give, is look around at yours and other people's lives. And yes, to a certain extent, the newspapers and magazines also reflect. If you know that there's a £1 house scheme starting in Liverpool in a year's time, you've got a year's worth of knowledge to head there. Hello, that's going to yield real life moments. But try and tap into something real, authentic, which is going to develop human moments, because that's what everybody wants. They will still want the big shows. They'll still want Strictly. We're perhaps a bit biased in the sense, as Claire said, our company is not really going to make Strictly. I think we could, but we're not going to. But so the stuff that we do, and I suspect largely Ricochet, and suspect largely television now is looking for, is going to come from real life. And that's the first place I'd look at.
And I think, think of broad, if you want to sort of think of long running, well, try and, again, there's always exceptions to the rule, but think of broad subject areas that are relatable, that you can really think of, lots and lots of different stories. The story churn, as we call it, needs to be sort of ever renewing. That's why City Hospital ran for so long. The stories were just ever renewing. Every week there was a new set of stories, new set of emotion, drama. Antiques. There's thousands and thousands of antiques out there and people out there with them that have got a story to tell. So some subjects you can probably think of a fantastic three-parter, but it's the long running that you can sort of keep up the level of engagement and sort of, as I say, it's the trying to keep that story factory running. That's the thing, I think, for a long running series, and keep it engaging and interesting to watch.
Thank you. Now, obviously, it's impossible to have a webinar or any conversation at the moment without addressing why it is they're actually having webinars and not meeting in person, which is because of COVID. And so what I'd like to know really from everyone is how it's changed broadcasters' attitudes towards formats. And I mean this in a really broad sense. So in terms of formats that you might have been in production with, formats that might have been maybe just about to have been greenlit or were greenlit, formats that were in pre-production, formats that you're now thinking about pitching. How has the attitude towards formats changed or developed, I guess, as a result of what we're going through now? And I'll come to Hannah and Rob for this one.
So I would say it's tough, but formats are going to be vital to get through it. So it's tough in that all the stuff we've been saying so far about formats is that this is this Bible, this recipe of how you make the show, but suddenly loads of these sort of key elements you can't do. We can't film that scene in that room with all those people because we can't socially distance. How are we going to do that? So there's been awful lot of head scratching. However, I would say a formatted program is always going to be much easier to make in COVID than a less formatted program, because a format's a form of control, isn't it? You know what's supposed to happen now, so you can then think about the kind of health and safety controls you can put in place to film that sequence. If you were filming a really unformatted, out there, observing what and not knowing what was going to happen next, that's very difficult to legislate for with all the kind of COVID protocols that I'm sure everyone's been spending an awful lot of time thinking about how they're doing for their various shows. So it's been tough. I mean, we've only just yesterday started refilming The Repair Shop after months of figuring out how to. But there have been other shows that we've been commissioned with that are just on ice at the moment because we can't make them under the current restrictions.
And Hannah, can you say any more about how you're doing The Repair Shop under these circumstances?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are basing our protocols on the 2-meter distancing, and there's many challenges. I mean, our location is in some ways great because it's lots of outdoor space and large areas, but also in terms of our kind of crew space and things like that, we were limited for green rooms and things like that. So we've had to think about the sorts of spaces that we're using and how we can accommodate the crew. We're obviously minimising who we've actually got on location, and then of course, editorially, our big challenge has been how we make a programme in COVID times not look like it's in COVID times, because I think nobody actually wants to be reminded of this rather rough time that everyone's been through. And for us, the key thing is warmth, which we've discussed quite a lot, and hugging, like you saw with the jukebox, Jay coming in to console and sympathise with our contributors is something that no longer can happen. The handshake, which has always been a format point, is no longer a format point. We've had to look very carefully about where our arrivals are going to be and how they come in and position themselves. How we replace that hug with lots of warmth in terms of words of support, and verbally kind of create that hug, as it were.
But the contributors can hug each other. It's just we can't hug them.
Well, we've had to also make sure we have things like people from the same household, because previously contributors wouldn't necessarily be from the same household. So, you know, we're looking at making sure that they are within their bubble so that there can still be that squish. I think just making sure everybody in the team and all of the experts and Jay feel very comfortable and that they know what they're doing, so that the positioning isn't the thing that takes over and isn't the overriding feeling, so that the rest of the warmth, the chat, the freedom, the safe space to talk about your item, to talk about your emotions still exists. So we've worked really hard to try and you know, continue to build that despite this social distancing. And I have to say, so far, 2 days in, this is our second day, you know, the feedback's good and the contributors are feeling safe and like they're able to emote, and you know, the experts and crew are all doing an amazing job of kind of keeping that warm space for people to still get the repair shop magic, I guess.
That's great. Long way to continue.
Thanks.
Sarah, I know the answer to this question, but not everyone else will, obviously, because we work at the same company. But in terms of COVID and formats that we were working on or in production on, how has it affected us and how we had to respond?
Yeah, so we were actually making the programme I mentioned earlier, the formatted history show, which was Tony Robinson's VE Day, Minute by Minute, which was going out for VE Day. So as you can imagine, that made the beginning of lockdown very interesting. And we had developed this fantastic, lovely format point where Tony was going to be dropped into the green screen, historical green screen, so he could sort of interact with characters and explain the moments as we went through the day, which we were very excited about. But he was due to do the green screen about 3 days after proper lockdown kicked off, and was no longer able to do that. So it meant we had to reapproach the format, as Hannah's saying, and just look at it again and see what we could do. And we ended up actually, my other half, who's a sound recordist, was sent to go and do VO recording with Tony, completely socially isolated, making him a VO booth in a house where he could be tucked in without having any contact with another human being, and remotely film a section of the program with him, so we could get him doing his pieces to camera, but without him having another person in the room, which we then treated to give it the sort of an archival look, so that it blended in with all the rest of the shoot. So the sort of the imagination required made us come up with something that could fit within that format, and it just felt like the right thing to do. And I think, I don't know if anybody's watched Spring Watch, but there's a format that's been around forever and is hugely popular. And for me, the version of it that's been going out during COVID has been by far the best that I have seen in years, because it's had this liberation, it's had this freedom to drop away some of the bigger, more produced moments that we were probably all responsible for adding on to programs. Sometimes a long-running format suddenly gets more pieces put on top of it, and it becomes quite unwieldy. And there's something really nice in seeing this sort of liberated form of it, where it can breathe again, the original.
Great. And Chris and Claire?
I was just thinking what Sarah was saying. I mean, those moments that we are responsible for putting on it. I mean, yes, but so often it's the commissioners we're under pressure to put those. Yeah. Have been under pressure to put sparky, you know, moments that will go well in conversations in West London on top of real formats. And actually, we've known instinctively to let them breathe. And now it's beginning to happen. And again, thanks to the repair shop, that, you know, that they're beginning to see the value of moments that breathe and letting real life breathe, rather than, you know, headphone heroing it, to get back to my earlier thing, coming in on television and saying, let's do this, let's do that, artificial imposition. So, yeah. I do notice, sorry. Yeah.
No, go on, Chris, yeah.
I was going to say, I've noticed that all the broadcasters are talking similar words at the moment about looking for pleasure, for calm. Those are the watchwords for new formats at the moment coming out of COVID. You know, for the next year or so, they're looking at things that are calming or pleasure, provide pleasure because of the state that people are in. Sorry, Claire.
No, I was just going to say, you know, in terms of our productions with sort of Close Calls and Quartered Handed, I mean, we just made the decision to put them on hold, simply because, you know, we're so reliant on being on location, interviews with police and with contributors. You know, it just wasn't, you know, it wasn't a priority for police, obviously, during lockdown to be giving us interviews. So, you know, we probably could have done something, but it was just in terms of being on, you know, very competitive daytime budgets. You know, once we start a production, we have to keep going to make the money work, and we have to film a certain number of stories a week. So it was just too much of a risk for us to keep going, really. But you know, we've still got the programs; they're still there. It's just and we'll start up again as and when we feel we can, you know, really go in with a good momentum, and we are able to go out and film, which obviously we are now with restrictions. But certainly we had another show with Channel 5 that was just about to be commissioned. And that's been postponed simply because, you know, the tone was felt, you know, not right during lockdown and sort of post lockdown. And as Chris says, I think you know, tonally now we are looking for sort of escapist and calming sort of content, which I think will sort of stay with us till, you know, at least the end of the year. But yeah, so that's our situation.
And Claire, you mentioned risk there. So how risk averse do we feel commissioners are towards formats in particular, or do we think that this is a time where they might be open to looking at new ideas and new ways of doing things? And I'll go to Rob and Hannah for that one first.
I think it's a little bit like Rob was saying earlier, in that in lots of respects, having a format is probably a good place to be right now because it is more controllable. You know, you can set up protocols to, sorry, my phone. You can set up protocols to make sure that you can adhere to a COVID safe way of working. And you can almost come up with more creative ideas as to how to make that format work, what those format points are going to be, what those moments are going to be, because you've got parameters. And so I think in lots of ways, formats are probably a good place, a good space for right now.
And I'd add that I think that broadcasters are pretty risk averse at the moment because money is very, very tight at the moment. So that means, you know, probably for long-running formats, it's more likely that they'll stick to the safety of something that already does well than take a big risk on something new. But having said that, with less money, you know, I think if before a broadcaster might have been spending loads of money on a really sort of out there experimental show that's a four-parter, now their money would be better spent on a clever format that can be produced more volume for lower tariff. So I think from that point of view, if you're going to get something away now, it probably is a format, a clever format that makes the most of the broadcaster's money.
Great, thank you everyone. I'm going to go to a quick question because we've been chatting all things formats for just over an hour now. And so I guess, especially in these current times, is the international market in your thinking when developing your format, which is a question that has come in. And I'll start with Sarah on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at any point in time, but particularly now, having that eye on the international is pretty crucial, particularly if, like all of us, you're part of a regional indie, because you need to be able to make the most of your IP and to try and get some return on it. I think the international thing almost is intrinsically built into it, because there's something incredibly populist and universal about all of the things that we've been talking about. So I think in that way, a format is beautifully lends itself to an international to reversion, because anything that we're doing that really would connect with a British audience will probably have its own version. It might need a tweak, it might need kind of a slight gear change to work in another culture, as Rob was saying about the German format that he was working with. But if we're talking about these popular universal subjects, then that's sort of baked in.
And Chris and Claire, what's your take on that? Are you thinking international when you're developing your ideas, and even more so now, perhaps?
Well,
yes, absolutely. I mean, always. I mean, if you can come up with a format that can sell, you know, internationally, then, you know, brilliant. I think, you know, we are always thinking like that, but then we've always got one sort of mind as well on, you know, what we do best. We do lots of long running series with emergency services and you know, so yes, absolutely. If we can, you know, turn them into international hits, that's brilliant. But then, you know, on the other hand, you know, £1 House was brilliant for Topical in terms of, you know, showing that we can make a real quality, you know, award-winning product in peak time. But you know, international sales for £1 House, well, no, you know, not quite so sellable. We tried to go for $1 House in the States, but it didn't quite work. But yes, absolutely. If we can you know, sell something internationally, all the better.
When we started out, we had a management company before we did our own management. We paid a percentage to that, and there's some bright guys there. And one of them actually said, summed it up. There's 3 types of independent TV production company. There's hit and run productions, usually based around the talent of an individual documentary maker or writer or somebody who's got. They come together to make a program and then they disappear. They've got no overheads. Probably somebody's house they work from. Hit and run productions. At the other end, there's international productions, which I forgot what they called it now, but you know, sort of international strength, who have to sell and do sell abroad massively, and in fact often deal in other people's programs. In the middle, the Series Producers Limited, and as they pointed out to us, you are Series Producers Limited, which is the most difficult situation because you need series to pay your overheads, you need to have offices and overheads, you need series to pay for them, and the chances are the best series to pay for them may not be the best ones to sell abroad, to become international limited. And you know, I think that's true in many ways, and the things that have kept us going have actually been not things that will necessarily sell abroad. And in fact, I'm glad we didn't only look for things that sell abroad, or else we wouldn't exist. But then we joined Avalon. Like we're part of Avalon, and Ricochet are part of Warner Brothers. And I've got a feeling that's even you have Woodcut have got some sort of partnership with another. You know, we are in partnership with people who have an international interest. So that is beginning to be a more important part of our thinking. You know.
Okay. And Rob and Hannah, is it a rhetorical question, given that you're part of Warner's, that you have to think internationally?
Well, I mean, I actually don't think it works in development to think internationally. If your starting point is, let's try and think of an idea that people in Britain would really like, but people in America would also really like, and people in Australia would also like, you'll come up with an idea that no one really particularly likes. And you've got to remember that if, you know, I mean, some companies do have a business model where they sort of sell to, you know, American companies. You know, if you work a lot with places like Discovery or Nat Geo, when maybe that's more relevant. But I think that, you know, we tend to deal with the UK terrestrial broadcasters. They are looking first and foremost for ideas that are going to resonate with the British viewer, and aren't particularly interested in whether or not you can sell it instead. So you won't get it over the line if you start off trying to create a hit international format. Make a really good show, and then other people will want it if it works.
Also, the first question a lot of international broadcasters ask in anything is, how well did it do nationally? You know, how well did it do in your own country? They're looking at the ratings and success before they buy. Different with one-offs, different with a few things, but generally speaking, you have to have status to sell internationally. It has to do well here. So,
okay. Another question's come in. How long does it take to get a typical format from development to screen? And answer honestly, please. Okay, I'll start with Sarah.
Forever. I mean, I think it's how long is a piece of string. It's very hard to quantify that with an exact date. It's one of those things where I think you just keep trying, and one of them will hit at some point in time. But the development of a format is not just in the kind of the commissioning, it's also, and the filming, it's also in the edit. So it's an ongoing process, isn't it? We might have a format, but it's not until the end of that process, as Rob was saying, when you look back and you're actually writing a format Bible, that's usually something that's gone through a great deal of development, then commission, then filming, then editing, and that's when you know whether you've got a format that's working or not. So it's a long time. People go for a long haul.
Okay, then I'll try a slightly more specific version of the same question. This one's for Rob and Hannah. So how long did it take from developing the repair shop to getting it commissioned?
It took a year. So from having the idea, I think from the first meeting when Carla Maria at the BBC said she thought that sounded interesting, to actually it being commissioned was a year, and that involved many versions of the treatment, taster tapes, because there's lots of people that have to be convinced within a broadcaster. It's not just the commissioner. That's actually the first hurdle, and then you're giving them the ammunition to impress their bosses, and so on and so on. And then, so we had a year in development, and then suddenly it was commissioned just before Christmas. And I think we had like about 3 or 4 weeks in January, and then we had to be filming, so it was crazy. The development compared to the actually making it happen was way out of whack.
Great. And Chris and Claire, how long do you think it takes on average for you guys?
Claire about the one.
Well, goodness, great. I think, like Sarah said, how long is a piece of string? I think, goodness. Totally depends on the project. £1 House, I was lucky enough to land the access with Liverpool City Council just at the time when they were converting their pilot scheme for the houses into, the pilot scheme worked. It was 20 houses, £1 houses. They deemed it to be successful, and then they rolled out a much wider scheme. And, I didn't even write a proposal for it. It was just, we're going to follow a bunch of people buying a house. I mean, buying a house for £1, it sells itself. So lots of other production companies were after the access. I was lucky enough to sort of call at the right time. Did people ask me for a treatment? Hadn't even written one. We made a few phone calls, and most of the networks wanted it, and it went with Channel 4. So that part of the process for that project was quite quick. The actual making of the show, 3 years. Council said it would take 8 months. 3 years later, we're still waiting. So totally depends on the project. Caught red-handed again. The idea was make the taster out of stuff off YouTube. Liam Keelan really liked it immediately. I was lucky enough to go to a pitch meeting, so I didn't have to go through commissioners. I went straight to Liam Keelan, who was the head of daytime at that time. He really liked it, commissioned it on the spot. So again, that was great. But other projects, as Rob said, they go through treatment after treatment after treatment, and it takes a long time. And it might not be right for now, but it was actually Katie Thorogood who said to me once, when she was a commissioner, that Claire, if you believe in an idea, don't give up on it. Just bring it every 6 months. Annoy us with it. And I think, again, slightly going off the subject, but that's the thing to do. If you believe in an idea, then just don't suddenly take it off your slate. Keep it on there. Keep it on your Sparks list, is what I've got. And keep trying, because it's a lot to do with timing, who the commissioner is. There's lots of things that have to sort of come together, I suppose, to make it go from a development to a commission.
Just going to say, I suspect the person asking the question probably means how long it takes before an idea becomes a reality, rather than specifically a format, because the format is applied really after the idea is basically accepted, really. And again, the answer is, as everyone said, it's as long as a piece of string. But yeah, ideas can get, when an idea is accepted pretty well, it might then take 3 years for it to happen as a format and the format develop. But when ideas are good, as someone once said, the Red Sea parts. I mean, it does actually people say, I like that. And you're in business, but the business might take a long while.
Okay. Next question is, do you think we should be aiming more towards SVOD platforms for new formats, as most networks, in their opinion, seem set on cookie-cut formats that are known to work? Do you find that SVOD platforms are willing to take more risks on new formats? And I will start with Rob and Hannah, given that the Repair Shop is hanging out on Netflix at the moment.
So it's on Netflix in the States, which has been quite exciting. I mean, it's only relatively recently that that Netflix has started dipping its toe in factual formats. So we've never had a direct commission from them. So they're not really someone we play with at the moment. In the fullness of time, that may be the case, but it's for us not at the moment.
Okay. Anyone else want to come in on that one?
I was going to say, can you imagine Rob selling the Repair Shop to someone like Netflix a year ago? I mean, if you'd gone with that idea, they would have just said, what? Yeah.
But the Queer Eye sort of led the way for that, didn't it? Really showed that you know, they can, I mean, no one knows what their viewing figures are today, but you would propose that did really well, because after that, the floodgates were opened, and there's suddenly loads of TV that feels like the sort of formats from the kind of mid-noughties on Netflix.
I wonder if they suddenly realise that formats are as bingeable as a box set.
Exactly, yeah.
It's funny you should say that, Sarah, because in these BBC briefings that Chris and I have been listening into this week, if they mention the word box set once, you know, it was mentioned, you know, a dozen times. I think they are now, you know, looking for shows that, yes, will work at 8 o'clock, but will also, possibly more importantly for them, work on iPlayer. And every idea they say they're getting in now, they're thinking about it as a box set. Does it work as a box set? Could you put it on iPlayer and people binge watch it? So, you know, as if to add yet another thing to think about when you're trying to come up with your format. You know, it's worth remembering that that's sort of where the commissioners are. Certainly the BBC at the moment, they're thinking what plays out on iPlayer, because that's where a lot of people are now, as we know, are actually watching television.
Really looking to compete with Netflix and Amazon as well. You know, the domestic broadcasters are thinking we must keep into this, and one of the major things that separate our box set, you know, box set production in a way, things that will go for. So I think it's pretty fun, not just the BBC, but most of the broadcasters are looking for that sort of longevity and structure.
Great. Thank you, everyone. There are a couple more questions, but we have overrun slightly. But I would like to thank everyone for taking part. Chris, Claire, Sarah, Hannah, and Rob, thank you for all your pearls of wisdom. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you.